Today on the Wet Fly Swing podcast, we've got Jim Teeny back on the show. Today, Jim gives us his 3 biggest tips on catching king salmon on the fly. Plus, we find out how I Spot 'em, I Got 'em came to be, and how you can see and catch more steelhead this year. Jim is one of the greatest OGs and ambassadors in fly fishing, having started his Teeny Nymph brand in the 1960s and being the one behind creating present-day sinking fly lines. It all stretches back to Jim Teeny. We're going to talk about that today. He is also a good friend of the family, a great guy. So you are going to discover the best color for flies for salmon. You're going to discover Jim's number 1 tip to know when a steelhead is going to strike. This is a great one. If you can see the fish, he's going to tell you how and when it's going to strike. And we get another great tip on spotting fish. Here we go. One of the best in the business, Jim Teeny from jimteeny.com. How you doing, Jim?
Doing good, Dave. It's always good to talk with you.
Yeah, it is. It's always good. I was looking at the last episode, I saw you had a big smile on your face. I feel like you're one of those people that always has a big smile, which is great. And we hear a lot, over the last 5 years since you were on the podcast, we'll put a link in the show notes to that last episode. I've talked to a lot of people, probably more than anybody else, where they've mentioned your name over the years, from whether it's tarpon fishing or, the Midwest or wherever. It seems like you've traveled all around the world. Is that kind of the case? Have you done a lot of traveling over your time in fly fishing?
I've been really lucky. I have done a lot of traveling, and I, God willing, I want to keep doing it. I enjoy, doing trips and hosting trips and putting things together for people to some of the places I've been that we know that are really good. And that's what I really want to focus on. Yeah,
and you just got back, didn't you? Are you leaving on a trip soon?
Well, I'm leaving January the 25th, and we're going down to Jurassic Lake in Argentina, for those giant rainbows. And then from there, most of the group is going back to Buenos Aires, and then we're going for 3 days of Golden Dorado, of which I've never done before. So
oh, wow.
We're all excited about it.
That is so cool.
Oh, man, we're really pumped up on this.
Man, this is great. And when you're out there, will you be using some of your flies and just like in the past you've used for everything?
You know what? It's all I've fished with since I started our business in 1971. So yeah, I've been there 3 times more to Jurassic. So this will be my 4th trip. And then the Golden Dorado will be a new experience, but I've tied up some really cool flies, and I know
cool.
they'll work. Yeah.
That's great. Well, I want to introduce you to some of our new listeners because it's been 5 years. And for those people that don't know who you are and your background, Teeny Nymph, Teeny Line Company, everything, you've kind of done all. In fact, you set the stage for, I think, scientific anglers a lot back in the day before, where we are now with sinking lines is kind of completely different than where we were in the 80s. But you were, a lot of people have attributed the success of sinking lines to you. And so maybe you could talk about that. Let's bring us back to that first idea, just to refresh. When did that start? Can you give a summary of how teeny lines and nymphs and how that came to be?
Well, the Teeny Nymph came about in May of 1962. And my friend Dan Shocker and I were going to go up to Oregon's East Lake in Central Oregon and for the big rainbows, browns, and brookies. And that's where I originated the fly pattern was May of 1962. Then from there, we went right to Diamond Lake, and we did the same thing. We just hammered the fish. And so, it was, and then I kept the fly a secret for 9 years, and so that was the start with the flies. Now with the fly lines, we didn't introduce them until actually on my birthday, August 30th, 1983 was when we got our first lines in. But prior to that, 5 or 6 years earlier, I contacted Scientific Anglers, which was Bruce Richards then. And I said, Bruce, would you make a line, the shooting head and the running line, all one piece for us? I said, I know I could sell that a lot for you guys. And I wasn't even thinking about our company, at the time. And Bruce came back and said, he says, I don't think we can make it, and I don't think it'll work. And so I just pulled back, and I watched technology get better, and then reapproached him in 1983. And at that time, he had to private label lines. You had to order at least 1,000 a year. So this is a whole new concept for fly fishing. So you didn't have any knot, no hinging, no anything. Your line was going to be one piece from the factory. And so they said they were trying to warn me and all this stuff. So I put it off for about a month or so because everybody was scaring me, Then I said to Donna one morning, I says, I'm going to do it. And she goes, you're going to do what? I said, I'm going to make those lines because we all need them. I mean, they will change fly fishing forever. And so our first year, to short story this, our first year we sold almost 4,000. I mean, that's a brand new concept, and the lines are still the most popular, the T series and all that. And I mean, it just made fly fishing easier for all of us.
Yeah, that's it. And it was the idea was the integrated, it's all one piece, which back in the day, people were cutting up lines and splicing things and using lead core. And so when you made that first line, was that Scientific Anglers that made those first 4,000?
Yeah, it was Scientific Anglers, yeah. See, that's what I was doing, was cutting and splicing. And then I had the president of 3M come out, and Howard West, and fish with me in Oregon. And after that, he goes, well, geez, he says, what do you think of our sinking lines? I said, well, I think they're the best on the market. And we were winter steelhead fishing at the time. And I said, but what you really need to do is have a line that'll sink 2 to 3 times faster than your high-speed ID. So he went back and sent me the very first samples of the shooting heads in Deepwater Express. And I worked on them, put them on a level running line. I tripled my fish hookups just because I could now get the line down, but I still had the knot and splice, but still it was the start of changing fly fishing, for all of us.
Right.
And that was really a big deal.
Right. And that's what it did. So you had, what was the biggest breakthrough? Obviously you got the sinking rates, the line sinking rates right, but also just on the integrated, how did that help the hookups? There wasn't like an interchange, or describe that, why it was better hooking up with fish.
Well, Dave, what I did when I first made our lines, I made them all one piece, and they were color coded, so that the floating line to the head, the head was always dark, they were perfectly balanced. But you could visually, as a fly angler, you can see the line coming, and you knew when you could roll cast it, or you could roll it to the surface, single false cast, and then shoot the line back out. And then it was easy to mend. If you needed to mend the floating line, you'd do that immediately after you made your cast. But usually with our T series and TS series, a single false cast back is all you need. You don't need to go back and forth, and because the weight and the balance, because the lines were perfectly balanced. And on the sinking section, I didn't put any taper. They were straight. So when they went out, they sank evenly. So they were perfectly balanced. And that just changed it for all of us, and then going, you didn't have tip lag, with the tip being a little bit lighter, and no, they were all the same. And they still are today.
Yeah. So are they essentially, you hear the name like density compensated a lot. Is that what those were? Is it like the density was the same throughout the entire line?
Well, it was. And when our competitor did copy our line, or tried to, and they said density compensated, we had nothing to compensate. We had the line. And honestly, Dave, and I mean this from my heart, if I could have made those lines better, I would have.
Yeah.
They're the best out there right now. They're perfect.
Yeah. And are those lines still, so right now, because I know a couple years ago people were trying to find them, and I'm not sure, are they out there? Could people pick up you got the series, right? The T300, 100, 200 series. Are they out there now?
Well, we're out of T200s, and we have T130s. We're getting low on T300s, and then we are out of T400s. We have the TS in stock. We have the TS 350 and 450, and we're out of the TS 250. And of course we have all the sizes in the mini tip. That's our favorite line, really, for lake fishing and stream fishing and whatever, for kings, gems, sockeyes, things like that. So.
Oh, good. And I was going to ask you about that with the chinook. So with the king salmon, what would be, because Alaska, right? You've done a lot of trips, I'm sure, all over the place, but What is the line for Alaska if you're heading up for a Chinook fishing up there?
Well, you know what? This is going to be a little surprising, but when the water is high in Alaska, when I go up with Dave Duncan and Sons, and I go up on the Connectoc River with them, if the water is high, the kings will often be in the brackish side water off the main current, and they'll pull in there, and then there we just nail them on the mini tip. I mean, it's just sinking. It's 5 feet of fast sinking, but it sinks nice, and it's just swinging along. And sometimes when it's swinging, you're watching your line real close, and then all of a sudden you see this big boil behind your line, and then you feel the tug, and oh my God, it's so exciting,
Yeah.
But other than that, then when we're fishing Alaska, we're mostly using the T300, like the TS350, the TS450,
Okay.
the T400s, the little bigger lines like that, and we fish them with a short leader. So we only have I'd say maybe 3 to 4 foot leader off the end of the line, and it just delivers the fly perfect.
That's it. So you have this. So we're talking single-handed rods. Would this be like for a Chinook? What would you be using for Chinook for the rod?
Well, I'm a single-hand guy. I just never did do the switch, and I've been able to cover probably 95% of the water that I want to cover. I can do it really good, even if we're down on the Rio Grande for sea run browns. You can still reach out. My favorite rod that I have, they don't make them anymore, was the one I designed for Temple Fork Outfitters.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a 10-foot, 5-piece, 8-weight that I designed. And I've used that on Steelhead Kings, everything. I mean, the chums, it's a really nice rod. But see, most of the 10-foot rods are 4-piece. And then for travel, that's why I made a 5-piece. And I got a lot of argument against that. They said, what do you want a 5-piece? It's unbalanced. I said, nope, I want it for travel.
Yeah.
And it's so good. It takes down into 2 feet.
Oh, right. So you can put it in with you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's nice.
And it really, really has been a good rod. So I'm coveting the one I have.
Yeah, you got it. But why the 10-foot? Why not over, say, a 9-foot or 9.5?
We have 9-foot too.
Yeah.
I just I don't know why. I think I got onto the 10-foot rods a little more when we were float tubing and doing lake fishing, just because when you're sitting in the water, it makes a foot taller.
Yeah.
And so I think that's it. But Donna, my wife Donna, she loves the 9-foot 4-piece rods that I designed, and that's what she uses in lakes. Like in a 6-weight, and
that's cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
That's awesome. Well, you mentioned the spade thing. It's interesting because you started out. I mean, my first memory of you was I always come back to this because my dad had the shop, and I remember like wading across the side channel on the Sandy on my dad's shoulders and getting over to the island. And I think you were there in some of those times, but that was the steelhead, winter steelhead fishing. And my dad never got into spade either, right? But it's really taken over the steelhead game. Like almost everybody you see is using spade rods. So what was it for you that kept? Because my dad really he never got into it either. Why did you ever test the waters there, or what was the thinking there?
Well, you know what? I just think that your dad and I are old timers. I mean, you know what I mean? We got used to the single hand rod. We were efficient with it, and it just does. These are the reasons that I love the single hand rod, and it's just my opinion. I love the fight from a fish when you're really fighting them more one-on-one rather than having a longer rod do all the work and everything. That's for me. That's part of the reason. And then, I don't know, I like the control I have with my single hand. Not saying that they should be ruled out.
Yeah.
Because some of the rivers are so small, you just don't want to go there with a 11 to 13, 14 foot rod if you're fishing smaller waters. So, but then again, when you get on the Deschutes, that's a wide river. And so you can cover way more water with the spey, so and I respect that. And I understand that.
Today's episode is brought to you by Northern Rockies Adventures, premium fly fishing trips in the heart of the BC Rockies. Premium all-inclusive fishing packages from Vancouver, BC. Daily fly-in fishing trips to get you straight to the action, and the lodges offer private cabins and the utmost comfort. Learn more about this exclusive BC fishing trip at nradventures.com/wetflyswing. Angler's Coffee roasts a full range of coffee with one goal in mind, delivering excellent coffee to every single angler. With a blend for every taste, a dry dropper on-the-go tea bag option, and a roast sampler, you know Joe at Anglers has you covered. You can head over to wetflyswing.com/anglers right now to support a sustainable company with unsurpassed taste. That's Anglers, ANGLERS. Let's take it back to the day. Do you remember when you first started fishing the Chinook, what year that was? You made your first Alaska. I always think of Alaska, but I'm sure you fished Chinook other places. But when you made that first trip up there?
Well, my first trip to Alaska was in 1975, but I started catching the kings on a fly rod, I believe it was 1971, and it was on the Kalama River in southwest Washington. And my friend Don Anderson and I were heading up to go fish the Kispiox River in northern British Columbia, steelhead. So we said we were in training. We went to the Kalama River, spotted a few nice steelhead, and we were fishing for them. And this would have been like probably, it had to be in early September, right? And then we, all of a sudden, our hole that we were fishing filled up with these giant king salmon.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they dispersed the steelhead like crazy. I mean, because they don't get along. And so they moved them out, and then all these kings were there, and most of them were in pretty nice shape. We couldn't keep them off of our fly rods. And we broke a fly rod, and we lost a couple of fly lines. And I mean, at the end of the day, we're driving home, and I said to Don, I says, God, that was a lot of action. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think then that's when my first love for the kings started out, since it was 1971, and then I love to chase them. There's something about them because you can't land them all. This is not going to happen. But I've been real lucky in my life that I've landed 3 officially over 60.
Wow.
And 18 over 50.
Jeez.
So I know it's like, so, like but a king, a 30 pounder or 40 pounder, they're still big and they're strong. But the ones that are a lot active, a lot of times it could be the 12 to 25 pounders. But those big ones, they've got the strength, and I just love the challenge.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the spotting. I want to go back to that because we talked about this on our first episode a while back. But the I spot him, I got him. I love, it's a great story. But talk about that a little bit, because I think it actually will help people to think about the amazing stuff you've done over the years. I mean, all the fish you've caught, but the spotting of the fish, especially like steelhead. Talk about that. Where did first the I spot him, I got him? Where did that come from? Was that something you coined, or was that something that came out of the New York Times?
No, I coined it, and the reason, it was back in 1986. Scientific Anglers had asked me to do a video on steelhead fly fishing, and they had asked me. They said, well, where do you want to do it, Jim? Do you want to go to Alaska? Do you want to go to British Columbia? And I said, no, I want to do it all within an hour of my home in Oregon. And so we did it on these are the rivers that we did it on, although we never mentioned it in the Catching More Steelhead DVD. But then it was a VHS. And it was the Wind, Washougal, and Kalama.
Oh, wow.
In South Washington, and the Salmon and the Sandy and the Clackamas in Oregon.
Yeah.
So, and those are the rivers, and I don't know, excuse me, I don't know why or how it came out, but I love polarized glasses. They help me more than anything to learn about fishing, than anything I've ever used. They were the tool, and my eyes were good, and boy, I tell you, they were better than they are now, but they're still good.
Yeah.
Thank God for that. But I would love, sometimes we would just go searching for steelhead. And if we didn't see anything, we wouldn't cast, because why would you if there's no fish?
Right.
So then during the video, and we were doing the Catching More Steelhead, I said, hey, if I spot him, I got him. You know what I mean? And I really meant it. I mean, if the fish would hold and allow you to make your presentations, then you had a really good chance of hooking them. Now, some of them, when you make a cast, they spook and they move out and then they're gone. Well, not going to get that one. But the ones that'll hold and let you drift your fly by and swing it by and everything. Those are the ones that, and then this is really interesting because I want to share this with a lot of people.
Yeah.
I could tell before a steelhead was going to take my fly, if I could tell if he was interested, because I would see his fins start to move a little bit. They would just move, just kind of like just twitch a little bit. And I tell he was getting excited. And I did that in the video and this one that was across the river on the Kalama. But I could see that he was getting really excited. And I says, I think he's getting ready to bite. And I threw the fly out, and sure enough, here comes my Teeny Nymph down there, bam, and I got him. I mean, it was like, it was just, you learn so much. And and the glasses, polarized glasses are absolutely, I think for eye protection and for learning about fishing, nothing's better for that. Even for safety and wading.
Yeah.
For you can see where you're going to step or where you're not,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they help. Have you always used one type of lens, like an amber, or do you have multiple? I know you had the teeny glasses too, right? Did you have multiple colored lenses?
We used to for years. We were way ahead of all the eyeglass companies. Amber was always my favorite. But we used the, not so much the blue or the smoke, unless your eyes are sensitive, but there's a rose and then there's a brown polarized. And those are all good.
Yeah.
But the amber for me, I always said, well, it brightens my day.
Right.
Because it really does. It does let in more light. And so like in the early morning or late evening, you can see into the water much longer with an amber lens.
Yeah, the amber's good. That's I like too. So go back to the spotting. So what would be if somebody's listening now, they want to, they're steelhead fishing, it's happening right now. What's your tip for them to spot more fish? Like what would you tell them? How do they, because sometimes they're hard to see. You're not going to just see some fish always sticking out, especially if the watercolor isn't that clear. What would you tell them?
Well, if the watercolor isn't that clear, you can't always spot them. So then you just have to read and understand the water and, the currents and look and think, okay, well, that looks like a good spot. Then you cast it. But if the water is clear and you can see them, then I always try to keep the fish in sight. I don't like go way upstream and then try to come down, swing the fly down or go downstream and cast up. But I try to keep them in sight, and then I try to estimate, well, where do I need to cast so this line will sink and come down and present itself to make the best presentation. So I'll do that, and always trying to keep the fish in my vision. That's really, really important.
Gotcha. Just don't take it out of your vision. Okay. And so if you spot a fish, you're sitting there, it's in a run, and there's all sorts of different sized river, but let's say the water's clear enough to see. How would you present the fly? Let's just take an example of maybe one of those rivers you talked about, the Washougal or something like that. What line would you typically put on of your T series? And then how would you get that into, because you got this Teeny Nymph, that's part of the thing is getting the fly down to and presented right. How would you do that?
Well, what I would do is, first of all, I would study the speed of the current and the depth of the water. And then I'd think, okay, well, then I've got to cast up here in order to get down by them. Now, if we're in a pool, say we're on the Washougal, if we're in a pool, and then you can see the fish just laying out there and they're spread out and everything like that, we always went to the mini tip. Then we always would go to at least a 9-foot leader. So it was longer. It wasn't the short leader, because when you tried the short leader, the line would be coming down and you'd see all the fish just kind of move out of the way, and they'd let it go through and then they'd come back. So then I thought, well, I got to make a longer leader. So I started adding on. And then we found that, 9 to maybe, honestly, we went sometimes up to 10 or 11 foot, just added on, just so that you had the fly and the leader coming down by the fish. No fly line, because just the shadow or the shade of the line might move them.
Yeah.
And that now if you're in the runs and the riffles, or you're in the deeper slots, then a short leader is absolutely the best. And then you got to cast upstream and estimate how it gets down and make that presentation. And it's so much fun. Can't tell you how much fun it is to do that. And I miss it because we don't have as many fish around like we used to.
No. And that's the same for Chinook. I mean, it's tough to think about, but Alaska is going through some challenges. It's really scary to think that the Chinook fishing, right? But I mean, think about that. Back in the day, the Duncans, when you were fishing up there, I mean, what was that like? Because I don't think the Chinook is, I think there's even closures up in some of those areas now, but what was it like back in the day? Like how many Chinook could you get into, on a good day?
I'm going to share something with you, and I wrote about it in my book, Fly Fishing Great Waters.
Yeah.
Jeff G. and Sandy and I, one day, the two of us on our teeny flies and our fly lines, we hooked 77 kings. And I'm telling you, none of them were under 15, and they were all up to over 40. They're right in that bracket range. Next year, another friend of mine and I were fishing, and we got dropped off because in between 2 weeks, they call it the turnaround day, where we're leaving another group coming in. So we got dropped off on a spot that we could fight fish way down river, and we didn't, it wasn't like we needed a boat, right?
Yeah.
We hooked 93 kings in one day. And I'm telling you, it was I just don't know that king fly fishing could ever be better than that.
Yeah.
I just don't think so. But I am going back.
Oh, you are?
With the Duncans, this year. And here's the deal. What just recently happened, I think a year or two ago, the natives there in the village, they realized that, hey, we got to do something on our kings to protect them. So instead of doing subsistence for 6 days in a row, then taking a day off, they're doing 5 days and taking 2 days off in a row, which really allows the fish to get into the rivers. Plus, they're not doing commercial fishery out from the mouth of the river. That happened last year, and it changed it, and they got a lot more fish in. So we're going up this year, and I'm really excited. I'm going up July the 6th to the 13th with really high hopes that a lot of kings will be back in. But you don't have to hook that many kings to have a great day.
No.
I mean, if you went out and you hooked 4 to 8 kings in a day, you'd go, my God, this was a great day.
I know. Yeah. And even it's kind of like steelhead fishing. Yeah. I mean, today, if you hook to steelhead, if you get a chance, I think that's good. If I'm going to be heading up there too. I'm heading up to like the Togiak area, kind of out of Bristol Bay. So you fish Chinooks, which is kind of a little more further north, right? Maybe talk about that. Where is the Chinooks, and have you fished other areas around Alaska for Chinook?
Well, I have, yeah. And see, I had a day, Tony Weaver, who lives up in Anchorage, he took my friend Jeff G. and Sandy and I, and before we went to the Duncans, we went to the Kenai, and we fished where the Moose River pours into the Kenai, and it was, I think, the Great Alaska Fish Camp. We fished from shore, and I fished with the mini tip because it's kind of a pool, like a brackish area, because the main Kenai was coming in glacial. It's kind of that greeny, and it's real cold. But the Moose River was like a tea color, so it was pretty clear, and it was warmer, about 8 or 10 degrees warmer. So anyway, went out there one day, and I did write about this also in my book because it was memorable for me. I hooked exactly 40 kings and beached 20 up to 60 pounds. And that will be, I'm sure, the best king day on the Kenai. I mean, it was unbelievable. They were with the mini tip. You could just move it along in that slower, softer water.
Yep.
And with the water being warmer, the kings were, once in a while, you'd see one roll out there. So you knew they were there, but you just didn't know what they were doing. And a few times I broke some off because I was stripping, moving the fly back and moving it back in and then getting ready to lift out of the water. And then a big king would grab my fly, and I overreacted.
God, right.
It kind of scares you.
Yeah. So how do you, let's take us to the wild. Let's say you're on one of these rivers in Alaska. There's some kings out in front of you. I mean, how do you present the fly? Let's say you have that mini tip on. Describe where you're casting and how you're getting it into the fish.
Well, what we do is we use a longer leader. Now on the Kenai, just because there was a little bit of color, I was only probably using 5 or 6 foot. I wasn't using the 9 foot, but traditional long leader, unless the water was clear. And we just cast it and follow the line with our rod tip. See, I'd relax we never ice stick. So your arm is relaxed and you're following your line and you're watching. A lot of times you can see your line actually hesitate or move or straight, and at that's a signal. You better do something.
Yeah.
Because probably a fish has picked it up. We fished also many years ago with Jim Zumbo, Donna and I. We were on the Tal-Chalitna River, and that was so much fun because we floated down, and then we just got into a lot of kings. I mean, I landed 2 of my 50-pounders back to back.
Wow.
Guess what I got them on?
Huh.
Our little ginger number 6 nymph.
Oh, number 6.
And the mini tip. Yeah, it was just like a little size 6, not a big streamer or or number 2 or number 4. And it was just, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Don't always think that you have to go the biggest fly in the world to get these fish.
Yeah.
You know, because a lot of times, like in the springers around here in Oregon and Washington, we catch a lot of them on 6s and 4s. A lot of them.
Yeah. So you've done some Chinook fishing in, I mean, you mentioned some of the Steelhead rivers, but you've also done some Chinook fishing in Oregon and Washington?
Yes, absolutely. Uh-huh.
What's been a good place to, over the years to find Chinook? Because you hear some people talking about how they're out in kind of the estuaries and lower down, things like that, because it is a little bit different right here than it is in Alaska.
Well, it really is. I mean, the Nestucca River and Three Rivers are good rivers, for the spring, and they also get a fall run. The Trask River is where I really honed in on the Trask back, and I think it was 1985 when Steve Posey, who was, with the Lamaglass rods. Do you remember Steve?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, he passed away now, but he took this is I'm going to make it a real short story, but it's a great story.
Yeah, sure.
So he grabbed a drift boat. He says, "Come on, Jimmy, let's go fish the Trask for the fall kings." So I said, "Sure." So we went down there, put in the boat, and we're drifting. We went down. People were on the banks, and we were talking to everybody. No, we haven't done any good. No, we haven't done any good. Then we came down just below the hatchery on this one stretch, and there were 2 guys fishing. And of course, "How you guys doing?" "Well, we're hooking some fish." And we went, "Wow, that's great." And then one of the guys hooked a fish, and he said, would you guys kind of keep this water and, stay here? And then while we fight this fish downstream. And of course, Steve and I go, "Sure." So we got out of the drift boat. And while the time they were down there fighting them, I hooked 5 and landed 3. And the biggest one that I did keep, it was 43 pounds.
Oh, wow.
That was the kickoff to fly fishing the Trask River.
Jeez.
I mean, for kings. I mean, it was like, holy mackerel, and but that was a learning. Now I know they're in the Wilson. I've got a few in the Wilson, but I've also caught some in the Kilchis, and people say they're in the Miami too. I haven't got a king in the Miami, because usually we fish Kilchis in the Miami for the chum salmon, for that window.
Yeah.
And that's really fun. If nobody's ever done that, that's a great trip.
Yeah.
That's
right.
You don't keep them, but you have more action than you can handle.
That's right. Nice. So I guess back to Alaska. So you're heading back. What do you expect that trip will be like? Or what's your expectations on that one? You're heading back. There's probably won't be as many salmon as maybe the last time you were there, but what do you think it'll be like?
Well, you know what? I'm going with my grandson, Garrett Stauffer.
Oh, wow.
And he's 28 now. And he says, "Papa, I want to go on a big trip with you every year." And so we're going together. And I know we're going to get into the chums. I know we're going to get into the sockeyes because it's the perfect week to be up. I mean, if you go a week earlier, you're mostly going for the Cromer Kings, but they still come. They still will be in our week. Maybe some will have a tint of color, but the sockeyes and the chums will be thick. And that run has never faltered on that river. And now with the changes that they're doing, I think we're going to have some great king salmon fly fishing.
Yeah, that's it. So, and the Connecticut is kind of up in the, what where would you describe that? It's up out of Bethel, or what part of Alaska is that?
Well, we fly to Bethel, and then we fly about an hour to Quinnahock. So we do fly from Anchorage to Bethel, then Bethel to Quinnahock. And then they pick us up in their jet sleds. And then we go up 18 miles up to the base camp. And then every day you can go and fish some of the good waters. And we always, during the king run, you always fish down lower, and they have some beautiful rainbows. That's where the leopard rainbows really, I think that terminology really struck, back then. So.
Right. Yeah, you got rainbows too. That's the cool thing is you got all the salmon, but then you have the leopard rainbows and everything else going on there, which is great.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it really is.
Nice. You got some big trips coming. So you're still, I mean, and I'm trying to think, you definitely, it sounds like you're not slowing down at all from all your stuff. Do you feel like traveling, you've never gotten tired of that? You kind of enjoy always getting ready for these trips?
I really do. And I think Donna is going to be up for going with me if we go down to Mexico, because last November we did a couples trip, not this one, but the one before. We had so much fun and we caught so many different kinds of fish. And we're going to host a trip. We'll set up the days coming up. And then also the Bahamas. I mean, Donna managed the Andros Island Bonefish Club for 9 seasons down there.
Oh, wow.
And so she knew everybody and she knew the best guides. And I mean, she really ran a tight ship there. And I mean, I think sometimes they resented her because she was making sure everybody got paid, but they were working. But
yeah.
But anyway, but learned a lot about it, and it's really a nice operation. So we're probably going to go in that direction somewhere down in the Bahamas. But then my trips, like I've got a trip, but there's only can be 7 of us on the trip, and it's down to Tierra del Fuego, to the headwaters of the Rio Grande River, that for the Sea Run German Browns, and then coming back, we're going to do 1 week there. And then coming back and doing a week at Jurassic Lake for the giant rainbows. I mean, last year when we did that, we were on. It was in January. Now know that that's their summer. That's the middle of their summer. So they're just the opposite of us. In our group last year, there was a 22-pounder, a 21.5-pounder, 18-pounder, 1 or 2 17s, and a couple 16-pounders landed. But they averaged about 8 to 12.
And and you use the mini tip there for those?
Yes, the mini tip. We used sometimes some of the guys will use a floating line because sometimes you can see them. But I used the mini tip, and then a line that we don't have anymore, but was what we called our phantom tip. And it was a 5-foot, very slow sinker. I have one left and I've been used to that. And it just kind of just barely gets you down a little bit. But the mini tip was good, was consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's right. And the mini tip, what was that tip? So describe, how long is that mini tip versus, say, the normal?
It's only 5 foot. And it's an improved weight forward taper with 5 foot of fast sinking. And so the line's like a goldenrod color. It's really beautiful. And then the tip is black. And so that's kind of how it works, But it's a nice line. It's our most versatile line that we have. But if you needed to get down, then you go to the T series or the TS. But other than that, it's perfect.
Togiak River Lodge is the Alaskan adventure every fly fisherman dreams of. The lodge specializes in remote and exclusive fishing trips for all 5 species of salmon, plus rainbows, dolly varden, and much more. Togiak is the only lodge with access to 30-plus miles of river, the best guides, the best boats, and lots of fish with little pressure. I'll be heading up there this summer, so check in with Jordan and the crew right now to find out what they have available. You can head over to wetflyswing.com/Togiak to learn more right now. That's Togiak, Togiak, to discover that wilderness experience you've been looking for. So when you're going up back to the Alaska, so you're going up there, if somebody's going up new to an area they don't know and they're trying to find Chinook, what's the tip there to find some of these fish if maybe there's not a ton of Chinook in the system?
Well, you know what? I would welcome anybody that wanted to ask me any questions, to come to our site. And honestly, I'm more than happy to help someone that wants to learn or know a little bit more about technique or whatever. So going up to Alaska, the Kenai's up and down. I mean, the run's been down, and the Susitna, and we fished Willow Creek and got King. Yeah. And I hammered them.
When was that? Was that a long time ago?
Yeah, it was a long time ago with Tony Weaver. And he took me up there one day because he lives in Egg. Come on, Jimmy, let's go fish Willow Creek. I mean, I don't know. And just for the time that we fished, I think I landed 6 or 7 kings. I mean, it was really good.
And this is right off the road, right?
Yeah. And then I know there's other places. I fished the Togiak. I fished the Mulchatna. The kings, I'm just going to warn everybody.
Yeah.
don't go after them unless you've been doing some exercise.
Oh, really?
Oh my God. I mean, they're really strong.
Yeah.
But you know, like pound for pound, there's probably no salmon that's stronger than a chum salmon.
Oh, really?
They're powerful when they're fresh. And when that's what we're going to get into them up with the Duncans this year. Some of them will be so chrome bright that you have to tilt them a little bit to see, well, is this a sockeye or is this?
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, to see even begin to see a bar. And they're aggressive. They're great biters, great fighters. And when they first come in, Brad Duncan told me one time, he says, well, Jimmy, let's keep, we're going to keep some sockeye. We're going to have them tonight. Let's keep a chum or two and we'll compare. And when we did keep a chum, a lot of people said, oh, this is even better maybe. And the meat was orange. I mean, so it was just like.
They're good.
Oh, yeah, they were delicious. There was no fishy taste or anything. So it was just kind of, you learn a lot. And gosh, I've been doing fly fishing now since I was 12, but I'm still learning.
Yeah, you're still learning.
I'm still learning.
That's so good. And so when you're up there on this Duncan trip, will you be casting out there and when you're fly swinging through, will you be, you might catch a chinook. You don't even know what you're going to catch. Is that kind of how it looks? Or are you more spotting some of these fish?
Sometimes you spot them. You really spot the chums and the sockeyes. And so one of the things I'd like to pass on to anybody that is going to go to Alaska and fish for the sockeyes is don't wade. Don't get out in the water because their travel lanes are real close. They fish the chum and the sockeye and the pinks. They'll come up really close to the river, the shoreline.
Yeah.
So if you are standing at the shoreline, when they come to you, they're going to go out around in the deeper water. And then they'll come back in when they pass you, and after a while, they'll move back in. But don't break their travel lane. Stand back, and when you see them coming, because oftentimes you'll see nervous water, and you can look downstream, and you'll see the water just kind of move a little bit. That's like bone fishing. It's like, here they come.
Right.
So we're all lining up, and the mini tip is absolutely perfect for that. And that type, when they're coming up in schools, you don't really need to have a long line, a leader. Just a 4-footer is perfect. And it doesn't have to be exactly 4 feet. You know what I'm saying? But
yeah,
right in there. Could be 3, could be 5, but right in that area, that's pretty good. And then we fish sizes 6s and 4s. And our number one color has always been the hot pink.
Oh, hot pink.
But the hot green, like the chartreuse, is also good. The ginger, which is the white, that's really good. And then our chili, which is red, that's really good. And then sometimes we'll get them on the black. But if you just say, okay, well, I'm going to just take one color, you would take the hot pink. That hot pink is deadly. And we tie it up with a blue head. So it's hot pink with a blue head. I think it looks like a candy bar to them.
Right. Yeah. and is that hot pink fly work for all the Pacific salmon and maybe other species?
Yeah, I actually won the Pacific Rim Saltwater Fly Fishing Championships years ago in British Columbia with our hot pink number 2 leech. And I was fishing then with Tim Rajeff.
Oh, yeah.
And then Steve Rajeff was there. And Brian O'Keefe and I went up. And I thought when we were going up to fish, it was going to be in the saltwater. And I thought and there was 12 of us. I thought it was the U.S. against Canada. And Brian Chan was there, from Canada. So anyway, we get up and it was a 2-day tournament. But the first day, Tim wasn't feeling well. He was just getting better. And everybody else was out further. And I says, Tim, don't worry about it. Let's just fish in close here. And let's go over to that rock pile and catch some sea bass, the black bass. But they didn't catch. But we hammered about 20 each. And then the next day was the last day of the tournament. And then Brian O'Keefe was leading it because it was a terrible fishery. Let me just tell you, out of the 12 good anglers for 2 days, there were only 6 fish landed totally.
Wow.
Total. I mean, think about that. That's nothing. So anyway, the beginning of the second day, Brian O'Keefe, he lands another silver, but one was, I think, 6 and the other one was about 7. And then Brian Chan got one about 9 pounds. And then one of the other guys got one was about, I don't know, 4 or 5 pounds. And so we got down. This is exciting for me because I just went up there to be with my friends. Okay. We got down to the last hour, which I didn't know at the time. And I thought, well, heck, I'm using this chartreuse, and all I had really a big one follow it, but he was too close to the boat, so I didn't get him. So I opened up my fly box. I looked in there, and there was this hot pink leaf. And I thought, well, I don't know a salmon that doesn't like the hot pink. I put it on. In a matter of minutes, I land this one that was like 4.5 pounds. We got it in, registered, radioed it back, released it. And then a few minutes later, I get a 12-pounder. So now I've got the biggest and the most weight. I won gold.
Really?
I won the tournament. And the guy came back from the radio. He goes, "You've got 3 more minutes to fish." And I looked at Tim and I says, "I'm done."
Yeah.
And Tim says, "I think you won the tournament." And I did. And Bryant O'Keefe, he won second. So we're driving back home together, and we've got first and second in the tournament.
Oh, wow. And was this like a Stillwater tournament?
No, it was the saltwater. We were in the ocean.
Oh, this is the ocean. Yeah, gotcha.
I think it was like Langara Lodge, I believe.
Oh, yeah. I see.
And it was on, like Prince of Wales Island or something like that.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, but it was really, honest to God. I never thought, that I would win it, but I wished I would have put that hot pink on sooner.
Yeah, that's right. I'll remember that. So the hot pink is a good fly. So if you're going to catch a Chinook, a hot pink would be a good color to use.
Oh, yeah. You'll do really good. Originally, when I started king fishing on the Kalama, black was the number one color. You didn't need anything else. And it was deadly. But now that we fish, we get them on hot pink. We'll get them on ginger, which is the kind of the whitish color. We'll get kings on orange. And we'll get kings on the chartreuse or the hot green. But I want to warn people, if you're chum fishing, pink salmon fishing, sockeye fishing, they don't like orange. I'm just telling you, I'm nailing them on the hot pink, and I put on an orange just to see, and they let it go by,
Right.
And then I go back to the hot pink, and bam, I got a fish, fish,
Right.
It's really interesting, So I don't know that they see colors like we do, but I think they can tell tones and different things.
Yeah. And describe the Teeny Nymph a little bit for those that don't know. What is it's essentially? I mean, you think about some of the one of the best flies in history. The trout fly is the pheasant tail, right? Is maybe the greatest fly ever. But you've got it's similar, right, in some ways.
Well, the whole fly is all tied with the ringneck pheasant tail feather, and we had a single body, a double body. Then we had a leech as we had added on. But I started out with a single and double body, back in the early 60s. And then I'm sure that your dad and I on the Sandy River back in 1978, we landed, I think it was 97 steelhead in a couple of months, winter runs.
Really?
On the team. We tried to get to 100, but we didn't make it.
You didn't make it.
We put on a clinic. I mean, we were at the slaughter hole, below where Marmot Dam used to be.
Oh, yeah.
Your dad and I, we were like 2 kids on the river. I mean, we had so much fun.
Yeah.
And it was really great. Doug and I just enjoyed each other and still do.
Right.
So
yeah, that's really awesome. Yeah, the slaughter hole, that was back in the day. Marmot Dam now is gone, so I'm not even sure if that's really a good run anymore. But it used to, fish used to kind of keg up there at the bait in the slot there.
During that year, so 1978, when we were coming down off the height, the steep bank, you could look out in the water, and I'm telling you, I think sometimes there were 600 to 800 steelhead in there. And so we couldn't wait to get down that bank, wade across the river, and then fly fish from the other side. It was just unbelievable. And your dad told me, and he said, "Jim," he says, "we better enjoy this because I don't think we'll ever see this ever again." And unfortunately, your dad was right.
Yeah, that's true. So tell me this, have you ever been on a trip and gotten tired of catching fish? You've caught so many fish.
I don't think so.
No, because I always think of challenging, how do you challenge yourself? You got all these. I mean, you've caught, talk about that a little bit, because you've got this fly that's caught. How many different species has the Teeny Nymph have you caught around the world?
Well, I don't know. We've got shark and bonefish and barracuda and permit. And I mean, honestly, if it's swimming, we got a really good shot at it.
Yep. And why is that? Why do you think that is? Because the fly is pretty, I mean, it's like you said, there's not a lot to it. It's pheasant tail dyed different colors. Why do you think it's so effective?
I just think the profile, and I don't think it duplicates anything. And it's so natural looking. I think it's just, it just looks like something that if they're curious, that's what they're going to pick it up, you know? So I think I got really lucky on the pattern and you know, just the ringneck pheasant tail feather is really a great durable feather, you know? So for all the fly tyers out there, it's something you shouldn't overlook. I mean, it's just the pattern works, and by gosh, as long as it's working, I'm fishing.
Yeah. And do you ever do the natural, just like the brown, the natural color without dyeing it?
Yes, the natural is the original, and sometimes I go back to the natural and just hammer them. So, you know, but antique gold, I love antique gold. I love the insect green, and then of course the black, and those are the colors that we use for trout. Like, so you go black, natural, antique gold, insect green. Those four colors they're the best summer steelhead colors, and they're the best trout colors.
Gotcha. Okay. And we're coming up now. It's kind of in the holiday season. We've got around the corner the show season. Do you, I mean, you used to go to some of the shows. Did you love going out to all the outdoor shows, the fishing shows? Did you used to go to a lot of those?
Donna and I were actually road warriors. We did shows. Honestly, I think we did them for over 45 years.
Oh, wow. You did. Yeah.
We did. We would travel. And our group of people, you know, we just became like a family, you know, and you'd travel. And we did it. We did them down in Phoenix and Los Angeles and San Mateo and Sacramento and Salt Lake City and Denver and Spokane and Seattle and Portland. I mean, just everywhere. But I think about 6 or 7 years ago, we just said, you know what? It's a lot of work. We've paid our dues.
Yep.
And we're not doing them anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and we haven't done them for a while. And it wasn't that we didn't enjoy it. And, but.
That's great.
Yeah, I think we did it.
You did? No, I know. I asked that because, I mean, I've been doing them. I really enjoy them too. I think it's part of it is just talking to people and meeting old friends and stuff. And you've talked to, I mean, over your time, like I said at the start, there's been so many people that have, you know, made note of knowing you and fishing with you. But I mean, how many, if you think about all the places, right, around the country, all the people, you know, how has that been? What's that been like being in the fly fishing industry for so long now? Like, is it just, do you look back and think like, wow, that's pretty amazing what you've done?
Well, you know what? It was kind of like a childhood dream, I guess. Once, I mean, not when I was young, but once I got to the point where, you know, I thought, well, maybe I could do this as a business because our fly was so deadly, and it was originally just for trout. And now what I'm really most proud of, I thought I'd be known for the Teeny Nymph, but I believe that I think when I'm gone, I'm going to be known for the fly lines.
Yeah, you will.
How it changed the industry, you know, and for everybody. But the journey way back in the beginning was really, really fun and enjoyable. And it seems to have changed a little bit now. And I mean, maybe it's just because we're all getting older and everything like that, but the sport is still there.
Yeah,
the sport
definitely
just as good as it was before we got started. And so for anybody that wants to get into fly fishing or give it a try, it's a lifetime sport. It's something that you should see our grandkids fishing.
Yeah, they're into it.
They're predators.
Yeah, that's awesome. God, so good.
Dave, do you remember the time with your brothers and your dad and I? We all went to Barnes Butte Lake.
Oh yeah, Yep.
You remember that? Do you have the photo?
Oh yeah, that was right. That photo of we all had all the panfish, and that was okay. Yeah, that was the deal. Now, what was that lake? Was that something a private lake, or I don't remember. It was so long. I was probably like 4 or 5 years old.
It was a private lake, but it's no longer available to people because the owners had sold it. But back then, Roger Hudspeth owned the lake, and he would let us fish there. And there were bass and bluegill and trout that he put in there. And he originally put the bluegill in, but there were some big bluegill, lots of bass, lots of action. And I love that photo of the four of you guys just lined up, each holding up a fish. It was really, it's a memory,
Oh yeah. Then the photo, out of all the photos, there's a few that stick out, and and that's one of them. That's definitely one that we have around the house. That's just a cool memory.
I know.
Well, tell me this, Jim. I want to a couple more questions before we kind of start to take it out of here. But you did this thing. I mean, like you said, we're talking 70s doing this. When did you know that you had this thing, you were going to make fly fishing your business? What was that like? And when did you know? And then what was that feeling like?
Well, back in 1965, I took over and owned and operated the Academy Theater in Montevella on 78th and Stark Street. And it was during the last year that we were fishing on the Olympic Peninsula. Don Anderson and I were there, and we met some lawyers, and they were from Portland. And he said, you ought to try to patent the fly. So this would have been, back in 1970. And then in 71, I started the business. And so I kept the theater for the last year, and then I started the fly business. And we didn't start it until July 1 of 1971. And during the 6 months, July's not a good time to start a fly fishing business, but during the 6 months to the end of the year, I did $1,800. And that's like $300 a month, right?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, there's a business here.
That's it. You made some money.
I thought there's a business here.
That's
and
it.
So that's when I sold the theater, got enough money to start the business, and then the rest has been history.
Oh, wow. The rest is history. That's so cool. So you knew, and that's really awesome, because I think like the space I'm in, like the online, it's the same thing when you go back to it. When you make your first dollar online, you realize like, wow, somebody gave me money for this thing. And then you just realize like, oh, I could probably do this again. I could replicate it, right? I could scale this. And that's kind of what you did. You scaled it fast though, because after that, when was that, from 71 when you started July, and then you sold those first 1,000 lines? Was that was a few years later?
That was 1983.
Yeah. So you had 12 years.
Exactly. And one thing I'd like to say to you, Dave, what you're doing for these podcasts and for our sport is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
You are making a difference, and people need to know that. This is how people can learn and advance themselves and get more familiar with new techniques. So we want to applaud you for that.
Yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate that, Jim. It's been one of those things where, my dad was obviously a huge influence on me. He was everything, back in the day. And when I started this, you were, gracious enough to be one of my first guests. If you look back, I think you were episode number 5.
Wow.
Before we had any listeners, right? Barely. We were just starting out. And now we're up to episode 550. And I've interviewed over 600 people now of some of the, biggest names around the world. And so, yeah, it has been this amazing journey, and it is about helping people. And now we have a travel program, so we're traveling around the country. I'm meeting up with listeners, and it's just been this thing, right? I think that's how we're doing it. It's always been a good space, though. I think the people that are in fly fishing are in it for the right reasons. Do you feel there's a lot of truth to that?
Absolutely. Yeah. It becomes a passion and a love, and it isn't always about that you have to catch big numbers or big fish. It's the fact you're out there and you do want to catch fish, and you are trying, but you're at peace with yourself and everything.
Yeah.
You're just enjoying it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Nice. Well, I think, and there's probably lots of questions. I think the lines obviously are something, there's lots of lines out there now, lots of different things, but like I said, I'm heading up to Alaska. So if I was going to be getting up there to fish for these kings, you're telling me I should be bringing up a mini tip or a T 350 or something like that. That's kind of the range.
Yeah, a mini tip and maybe like a TS 350 or 450. Those are longer lines. Excuse me. Those are 100 foot, and the head is 30. So you can use them on a switch rod or a single hand rod. And I'm not so sure they even wouldn't work on your spay.
Oh, right.
Yeah, they're a full 100-foot line.
Okay. How long is the line?
It's 100 feet total. So you got 30 foot ahead and 70 feet of floating.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So it's a full line.
Yeah.
Nice. So yeah, I think, and I'm pretty excited about it. We're heading up there, and it's going to be, again, it's just like a journey. It's kind of an experience, checking out a new place. See, Alaska. What is it? It's Alaska. You've been up there a lot of times. What is the one thing that keeps you going back, other than the fish? Because you get the fish. Do you love the whole experience of the towns and the? It sounds like the Duncans. That's not a lodge, right? That's kind of remote river camp.
No, yeah, it's a river camp, and I mean it's very comfortable. They've actually got toilets. And
it is right.
I mean, literally, it's an amazing base, river camp, and but it's just, it's the people, it's the sharing of, like right now in our lives, especially for Donna and I, when we go fishing now, it isn't about us anymore. It's about our grandkids or our friends. I mean, if they catch fish, that's more important to us than us catching fish. We've hit that pinnacle where, like, we don't always have to rack them up.
Yeah.
It's like watching your grandkids land a chinook on a fly rod is like really good.
Yeah, it is. No, that's what it's all about, I think, for sure, the family and friends. So, okay, well, let's take it out of here with this is our mentor shout out today. And I'm thinking about some of the people I know even though you've been a mentor for many over the years, I'm sure you've probably had a few mentors, but this is, and then we'll get into a couple of little tips to get out of here. But so who is somebody you think back, maybe somebody that isn't even with us anymore, that was a big influence on your journey in the last, however it's been, 50 years in fly fishing?
When I got into fly fishing, when I got interested in it, it was the late Joe Brooks. He went down to Argentina, and I saw pictures of him holding up an 18-pound brown trout and then 2 big brookies. And I thought, man, I want to go down to Argentina. And so it's in 1974, my first big trip of my life was down to Argentina, and down there with Jim Hodson, and we stayed almost 4 weeks.
Wow.
I mean, it was just unbelievable trout fishing. We caught Atlantic salmon, brook trout, rainbow, brown trout, and it was really, really good. But my dear friend that I just love is John Randolph, and he was editor of the Fly Fisherman magazine for many years until he retired, and took that magazine to the top. And John and I, we've archery hunted together in Oregon, in Idaho, in New Mexico, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we fly fish together. He's one of the finest people, and I believe to be the most knowledgeable person in our industry. I mean, above everybody else. And another person is Lefty Kreh.
Oh, and Lefty.
Lefty Kreh, for Donna and I, was like a father to us. He was just a great person. And he came out and stayed with us. And we actually, this will be interesting, but we actually took Lefty one day up on the Sandy River, and we waded across to the island.
Oh, no kidding. So Lefty Kreh has been on the island. That's awesome.
Yeah. Lefty
Wow.
was down there. It was really, really, back then he was able to do it and everything. But we just enjoyed him. He was an ambassador for fishing and for fly fishing.
Yeah.
And always had a joke a minute. He was good.
Yep.
I'm going to tell you, I said to Lefty one day, I said, Lefty, do you know what still fishing is? And he goes, no, Jim, I don't. He says, what is it? And I said, well, that's what you're doing after I got my limit.
Nice.
And he let out a laugh.
Did he?
And he goes, that's a good one, Jimmy. I'm going to use it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he was. Yeah, he's one of those guys. We had an episode. I think it was one of our big episodes we did. I never had Lefty on, but we did a tribute episode to Lefty, and I had a guy that wrote a book about him, and he told some of the stories. And we've heard a lot of people tell the stories of Lefty because he's, it's one of those guys you can never replace. Just from that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Lefty was there, and then and John too. I think John Randolph. We're going to have him on soon as well. So I'm excited about that. Fly Fisherman, you're right, has become. It's been the top magazine for a long time. And even now with magazines, going away and things changing with the digital market, Fly Fisherman, I think, is still going strong. I think I've talked to them recently, so they're doing great.
Nice. So, yeah. And, Dave, if anybody that's listening or has interest, contact me, at my site, if they would like to do a hosted trip with us.
Okay.
Because, I mean, that is something that I really enjoy. And we take the time out to make sure that everybody has a good time. And we go at the best times and we're going to the best places.
Yeah, that's perfect. All right, Jim. Well, I'm going to let you get out here. So give me this. So I'm going to be, again, heading up. There's going to be other people going to Alaska. We're in the Chinook water. We know there's some Chinook there. What are 3 tips you would give me if I had never caught a Chinook and I'm like just sitting there like, okay, I want to, and I'm going to be thinking about you when I hook up one of these fish. What would you tell me?
Well, you just read the water. If you can't see them, you just got to read the water and understand it. And the definite way to get them, if there's strong current, is to use one of the sinking lines, to get the down and follow the line as it's drifting along with your rod tip. Don't keep your rod tip up high, keep it lower and follow it along, because that way you feel better. You can be very sensitive to your line so that when there's a hesitation, whether it's a rock, a leaf, or a fish, you can feel it.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is follow it down through. And if you can see them, then stand and adjust accordingly. And don't be afraid to change flies, change color. Because they might be on one color for a little bit, and then they go off. And then you put on another color, boom, you get another one. And hang on and have a great trip up there. Let me know if we can help you.
I will. All right, Jim. Well, thanks for all your time today. Definitely appreciate catching up. And we'll have to catch up with you again sooner, and we'll see where your travels are taking you next, and we'll take it from there.
Well, thanks so much, Dave. You take care.
That is a wrap. You can grab all of the show notes at wetflyswing.com. And please follow us on Instagram and share this episode out with someone you love. Please send me an email, dave@wetflyswing.com, if you have any feedback or want us to put together an episode on this podcast for you. Check in anytime. I hope you enjoyed this podcast and would love to meet up with you on the water. We have new fly fishing schools going all year long and all around the country, so if you want to connect, let's do it right now. All right, time to get out of here. I hope you have a great evening. I hope you have a great morning or great afternoon wherever in the world you are, and I appreciate you for stopping by and checking out the show today. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.